Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Charles Hulse, and it is an honor to be presenting this year at Regent University's 2022 Annual Research Roundtable, specifically the Human Resource Development Roundtable. I want to thank Dr. Winter for allowing me this time. I am a business analyst for a local government contracting company here in Chesapeake, Virginia. We work directly with the Navy. I'm also the leadership coordinator for the community's emergency response team. My presentation today is titled "The Exploring Knowledge Sharing in a Nonprofit Disaster Relief Organization." Today's objective is to explain what a community emergency response team is, also known as CERT, how volunteers are the primary resource of CERT, what knowledge sharing is, how learning organizations are defined, what are the three levels of a learning organization, and then explain the study I conducted in 2018 to include the methodology, data collection, analysis. Then we'll review the findings and end with the conclusion. CERT is titled as the Community Emergency Response Team. Disasters often stretch communities to the point that resources are limited and professional responses are delayed. CERT is a nationwide organization. It's to alleviate some of the response pressure for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and that's why they developed CERT. CERT is a nonprofit program that trains volunteers on how to effectively get out in the neighborhood and assist when catastrophe strikes. The mission is to better serve the community by training ordinary citizens to be extraordinary volunteers. Nonprofits like CERT rely heavily on community volunteers' support. These programs are often subject to collapse and eventually disbanded due to the lack of participation from the volunteers. Lack of participation could be that the volunteer no longer feels valued, the time that they've been putting in becomes more than what they can afford to provide, or they just don't feel like they're getting anything out of it. Recently, COVID-19 has had a direct impact on volunteer participation. Volunteers are the primary resource of CERT. CERT leaders must be aware of what influences volunteers to withdraw from the program. To retain volunteers requires leaders to develop a trusting relationship with the volunteers. This is accomplished through proper motivation, positive encouragement, and being ethically engaged with the team. When this happens, trust is developed, allowing the opportunity to be transparent for communication and knowledge sharing. Learning organizations. Learning organizations are viewed as part of the organization that enables learning among its members in such a way that creates positively valued outcomes, such as innovation, efficiency, better alignment with the environment, and competitive advantage. Knowledge sharing is a transfer of useful information across organizational lines. Knowledge is one of the critical drivers of competitiveness and organizational success. The lack of knowledge sharing is a major reason why nonprofit organizations like CERT are unable to retain volunteers. So what are the three levels of learning organizations? First is individual. Individual learning is essential for the continual transformation of an organization because it expands the capability of the organization and prepares it for the future. This does not imply that the organization benefits from everything an individual is learning. Organizational transformation is achieved when the motivation and drive of what the individual is learning is aligned with the organization's mission, values, and culture. Team and group learning. How a team learns within a learning organization is not about the team's training, but how the team learns together. Team learning is found within the learning activities of the group rather than on the development of the process. Organizations can identify the strength of the team learning by observing how the members communicate with one another. Effective team learning will therefore minimize or eliminate the possibility of groupthink that can disrupt the organization's learning process. Finally, the organizational learning level. Organizational learning is the group's interrelating actions that result in a collective mind that betters the organization. Individual and team learning are related to organizational learning. They are not equal and potentially interdependent from one another, though. Organizational transformation is achieved when the motivation and drive of the group is aligned with the organization's mission, values, and culture. Now, I know this, I said this a couple of slides ago about the individual. So it starts with the individual, it grows into the teams and groups. And once the group is aligned with the mission, values, and culture, then organizational transformation is achieved. But as we all know, that's really challenging. The study. The significance of the quantitative study I conducted was to determine the current level of knowledge sharing and organizational learning happening among the diverse team of members of the Chesapeake CERT team. The study was conducted in 2018, 1 year before COVID was first announced. This would be the first study, though, conducted within an organization that measured the capabilities of the organization as a learning organization. CERT had never had anyone analyze their learning capacity. Nonprofit organizations like Chesapeake CERT, with no prior history of exploring their team's learning capacity, can use this study model to determine a baseline of their learning organization and build from the results. There were two hypotheses. There's a positive relationship of knowledge sharing being experienced among the members of the local community volunteer team and retention. Then there's a positive correlation between the Chesapeake CERT retention and the 7 dimensions of the learning organization. The 7 dimensions can be found within the Word document attached to my link. Analysis and data collection. Quantitative study was designed around Pearson's correlation coefficient and analysis technique. Pearson's correlation coefficient is the test statistics that measures the statistical relationship or association between 2 continuous variables. 49 participants were drawn utilizing the convenience or haphazard, a technique that is common choice when there is a narrow window allotted for gathering data from large groups. The technique was practical when selecting a non-probability sampling technique, meaning the probability of being selected would be unknown, and participants are random with no structure identified. The results. The correlation coefficients representing the relationships between the 3 learning levels were moderate to high, ranging between 0.531 and 0.852, so 53%, 85%. Learning levels showing the highest significant correlation percentage, 85%, were between the individual and the organization. Lowest correlation, 53%, was between the individual and the organization's overall learning performance. Correlation coefficients representing the CERT team's 4 learning levels showed a moderate to highly significant positive relationship of knowledge sharing within the group. Starting at the individual learning level, there appears to be a level of knowledge sharing between individual and the teams or the organization. Regarding individual learning, participants strongly agree that the team members were willing to help each other learn, provide honest feedback, and develop a sense of trust. Even though the results showed that knowledge sharing is happening, how that correlated to the overall organizational learning performance showed moderate results. Hypotheses 2. Regarding the organization's overall performance as it relates to the organization's learning process, the results revealed only moderate percentages. When measuring Chesapeake CERT's learning organizational performance, the correlation representative results revealed that individual learning was 53%, team learning was 70%, and organizational learning was 65%. So well below the 85% from hypothesis 1. Even though these percentages are lower than the knowledge sharing results, they appear to still be above average. This finding indicates that organizational learning process is functional and effective for the community the team serves. Conclusion. This study aimed to measure any potential correlations between knowledge sharing and volunteer organizations' learning process. Overall results showed that there was a statistical significance to saying that there were positive correlations within the organization. These results should not be generalized to the other area CERT teams, though, because of the sample size and because each team locality has different objectives. It is recommended that further in-depth research be conducted to determine if the participants' perception of performance for the organization is correct. After COVID-19, CERT leaders have emphasized stronger need for organizational learning. Any questions? At this point, I would like to conclude or end my presentation. I want to thank Dr. Winter again and thank Regent University for having me here during the 2022 annual Research Roundtable Conference. Thank you and be blessed.